So hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Paul D'Ambrosio. I teach Chinese philosophy at East China Normal University. Today, Sihai Weixue is very happy to host Professor Robin Wang and her talk, Metaphysics Against Aggression, What Rou Can Teach Us. The Sihai Weixue project hopes to distinguish itself from some of the conventional practices of contemporary academia. As posted on our website, we are not interested in male peacocks, jerks, or what Robin in her talk will refer to as roosters, or other types of aggression and egoism. We hope to accomplish this change in academic orientation by encouraging productive communication, humble discussions, and collaborative learning together. As many of us know all too well, miscommunication and missed communication can have disastrous results, from ordering the wrong food to starting wars. With the goal of fostering an environment of real honest exchange and open communication, Sihai Weixue encourages unselfish, anti-egoist, actual questions and responses. Here we have less of an emphasis on learning about Chinese philosophy. We take learning from Chinese philosophy as our guiding directive. Let us learn from one another and learn together. The topic of Professor Robin Wang's talk, Rou, and its alternative to aggression encapsulates well our attitude at Sihai Weixue towards the classics, towards tradition, and towards one another. So let us take Rou and the shared goal of collaborative learning seriously. I want to thank my good friend and colleague Dimitra for chairing this session and for Professors Gong Huanan and Manhua for their initial comments. So it's all yours, Dimitra.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Paul. We're very happy to have Professor Wang with us and Professor Gong Huanan and Dr. Li Manhua. I will briefly introduce Professor Wang. As you may know, Professor Wang is teaching philosophy, and she is also director of the Asian Pacific Studies at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. Yeah, she rocks there. That's true. She has also served as a Berggruen Fellow at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Science at Stanford University. Professor Wang is also president of the Society for Asian Comparative Philosophy. She has published numerous articles and essays and is editor of Chinese Philosophy in an Era of Globalization, published by SUNY Press in 2004. And Images of Women in Chinese Thought and Culture, Writings from the Preaching Period to the Song Dynasty, published by Hackett in 2003. Professor Wang has also, of course, authored the book that we all know and we highly recommend to anyone who wants to understand yin-yang philosophy. Yin-Yang, The Way of Heaven and Earth in Chinese Thought and Culture, published by Cambridge University Press in 2012. Professor Wang's research focuses on Chinese and comparative philosophy, more specifically Taoist philosophy, comparative philosophy, women and gender in Chinese thought and culture. We warmly welcome Professor Wang, who is going to give us a talk titled Metaphysics Against Aggression, What Rou, Suppleness Can Teach Us. Professor Wang, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Dimitra. Thank you, everyone. And it's amazing everyone come from different corners of the world. It's really Sihai. And also I'm particularly interested in what Paul said about we are not about the learning about, but the learning from. So this is very appropriate for all my today's talk. So let me just share my screen and then we start. Thank you. Okay, so basically I tended to do three things. I wanted to have a 3-point integrated, see whether I can weave into a coherent whole. So first point is, how do we understand this particular term in Chinese, in particularly the Laozi? It's a Rou, this concept of Rou. So it's a textual understanding, which I cannot talk too much, but quickly to mention. Then secondly, I want to look at can we constructing structure of reality, and also epistemological positions of Rou. So use Rou as a philosophical core, and to think about the important philosophical issues. Third one, it's really, I feel very much strongly about today's the world, and we confronted a violence and aggression. So how do we go about it? So that's my 3 things. You can see that's the punchline and I trying to do. Okay, so let's start the first one. Where this Rou come from? Clearly, we come from one of the texts, the 吕氏春秋, and use one term to describe 5 thinkers in preaching time. Okay, it's very interesting. First one started as Lao Dan, of course, is Laozi, is concept of Rou. Of course, then you have Kongzi, you have Mozi, we're all familiar with. But it's Lao Dan is about the Rou. So this it really triggered my thinking. Okay, how do we think about this statement or claim? Now, then we can back to think about what the Rou it's about. So looking at the etymology, and we can see Rou, this concept itself has 2 parts. One is the upper, it's a spear on wood. Okay, so spear we can see has 2 important parts. One part is metal in the head, and then you have wood on the body. So this, and then this images already tell us the concept of Rou come from humans' experience with trees. And this also, 说文解字, the first Chinese dictionary, also to define the Rou as has like a tree or has 2 modes, bend and straight. So if we think about the yin yang, it's a human obsession with the sun, and then the effect of sun come up this conceptual idea. Now I also think about the Rou is the human direct experience with the tree, to see trees bending and straight. Now, but interestingly, and the Rou actually not particularly just belong to Dao or Laozi. And also the early time Rou is defined as Rou, that is Confucians. Now Confucians also being seen as Rou, but in different context. Of course, Rou, and also there is story talk about the Rou, think about the teeth and the tongues. Which one going first? Lose the first, looking at human experience. Your teeth is hard, strong, but follow down first. Tongues stay with you forever. Now, let's look at very quickly, there's Shi Jing, 论语, and 荀子, all this Confucian text talk about the Rou, but clearly this Rou is defined it's a moral character, it's kindness, and it's a moral virtue, moral characters. This is what we see in Confucian context. But of course, we see Yi Jing. Yi Jing also talk about the Rou in a very specific way, especially think about the Tao of a heaven is yin and yang, but the Dao of earth is Rou and Gong. And then Ren is Ren and Yi, the Dao of the way of humans is Ren and Yi. But I wanted to see particularly point out, although Yi Jing talk about Rou and in connection with the Gong, so there's another concept that made a frame called the Gong Rou. So that's a point one Yi Jing have done so. And then another one is Rou and the Gong's relationship in Yi Jing. Actually, the Gong is primary, it's important, and take a lead, lofty positions compared with Rou. Though Rou is lower of subordinate. This is we will see, but then let's look at a Dao De Jing. We found out Lao Tzu and really elevated Rou to another level. Now we can see that there is a group of terms convey the same meanings, and but yet it seems like one extended the Rou this idea, right? Rou is empty, it's returning, it's still, it's weak or soft, subtle, yielding. These are terms, and the Dao being defined through these terms. This is the point one we see the Dao De Jing contribution to these particular terms. Then secondly, clearly, if you read the Lao Tzu and the Lao Tzu, you can see in Lao Tzu truly switched and we will see reorganized the Gong-Rou relationships. In Lao Tzu, we can see value Rou and then while restraining Gong. So position is changed. When we have this classical text here, especially Dao's elevation of Rou, and then this is beautiful. We can see also how we understand it. That's the one way, we can, as scholars, we can trying to do all kind of interpretations. But the mind also looking at the contemporary world we live is very ugly, especially violence, aggression, and we're facing in the most alarming and the conditions, right, in the contemporary world. This alarming condition, not just at the personal level, in the community level, in the national level, and the international global levels. So we see this. So it's as intellectual or philosophers, could we help out? Could we doing something about it? So this is one of the things I thinking about, see this relationship. So one of the things I was thinking about, I want to define whether we can see Rou is a metaphysical structure of reality. So usually Rou being, actually there's not a lacking of understand the Rou. Most of the sinologists, all people know Chinese thought and the culture, all Chinese self tended to take a Rou as a strategy, as a political or a personal or military strategy. How do you use Rou to overcome Gong's strength? But now I'm actually trying to do is, well, could we see Rou is a metaphysical notions? So is this possible or not? So this is an attempt. It's a work in the process. So then this is, in what sense we can take Rou as a metaphysical concept, or metaphysical in the sense of there is underlying structures of reality. So could we say, I think Rou cultivate the infinite space, okay? And Rou is Rou is presenting, of course, interactions and the connectivity, but then also Rou looking at this, think about the world in this small circular circular views, circular ways, not the linear perceptions. So that's the one thing. Secondly, I want to think about the Rou is from the epistemological point of view. To define the Rou as some mind, we can call the Rou mind. This Rou mind, I call it is epistemological positions, superpositions. Why call it super? But the super in the sense because you can see different dimensions. You see something unpresent, and you see something deeper, something subtle. And also I see this is a epistemological virtue, intellectual virtue, 智德, different than moral virtue. Okay, so this is what thing. But then, of course, I still want to celebrate and endorse Rou power. Okay, so how do we think about the source of power in this contemporary world, particularly the attitude toward the things, being in the world? So that's how this thing. But just very quickly, how could I establish Rou reality? Okay, so this is thing. So there is a different way. Of course, yin yang will help me because to help to see the world, it's not isolated beings, right? But I will see it's a fluid construction and multiple elements, or you'll see multiple connectivities according things the functions. But then there's very interesting concept here. I want to particularly define our features to think about this Rou reality, that is continuity and the contingency. This is the two, people know the metaphysical issues, you will see how these two very important concept and define this important, we will see very important structures of reality. So this one, I also see, could I establish the condition where continuism and the contingency is important aspect of Rou? And then, so, of course, you can see how the things connected with the cross the boundaries. But then there is also very important things we think about the nothingness, nourishing. I think nourishing and support is most important. So in here, consistencies, we will see about the continuism. It's a time. That is Lao Tzu's time. If we reading Lao Tzu's text, we see lots of terms. For example, go and come, 往来, or the returning, and somewhat in, right, and advanced and retreat. So this is really Lao Tzu's time show us the Lao Tzu's time is a freeze time. Of course, we talk about the Shi. Shi is a circular, it's a season, right? It's not a script. It's not interval time. And it's you can see it's occurrence. To understand this whole ideas, of course, we will think about the time zone. Like right now, we probably have 3 or 4 time zones, right? So that's so different. The time, it's not this particular moment, but we can see it's a spiral movement. And of course, the concept is aging. Aging is this silent transformation. Now that it's just now, what is here. So then another things I will think about the spatial time, because the contingency relies on space. So we can see in the Lao Tzu, we also see quite a bit this concept of 上下, up and down, and the bending and tending. And so, of course, this is the whole things, this is the idea, thin and sick, right? So this is a spatial, how these things take or even relationship take space in this world. So this is, we see this type of idea and in Tao Te Ching often. Okay. Now, I want to just highlight very quickly this concept of how this idea is actually being applied to today's they say AI, because I met a Chinese AI professor, and I asked him, what's the difference? Is Amazon or Google's, robot, and what the robot you made. So he told me Chen Xiaoping Jiao, and he's saying we designed the robot. There is ideological differences, because in the Western way to think about the robot, like how much power you give robot. If robot have too much power, they will smash a strawberry. And this one is really fun. They made a tofu. How to robot can pick up a tofu or soft cake and the wood, right? You have a different power to grasp it. You're too strong, you smash it. You're too soft, then you will not able to pick it up. So you think there is one way in the most Western are doing is doing through the mathematical calculation, what exactly precise, how much power you should give to a robot. But in Chinese concept, and then they are think about, they gave this robot certain kind of space called rongca, where they allow robot to make own adjustment. This is very interesting how this power actually located in space and gave a certain kind of space. So here quickly, because I know my time is really short. So I want to see the role is clearly this role reality. If we unfold it, we can see it's a process, it's a method, it's a narrative. Okay. And also it's accumulation of wisdom. And this is a practice. So this we could, there is different talks, conceptually you can do it, but I'm just going to quickly doing that. Okay, now what about the role mind, right? The role mind, we will see it in a Tao Te Ching allows, you can see there is a concept of huang hu, there is this concept of hun hun, meng meng, this is all things. What this role mind is about, when you see the world, then one line you can see important concept is based on this uncertainty, right? So what we will think about this uncertainty is the way to understand the world and understand the reality. I just did something on this Tao Te Ching, chapter 8. Right? There is said, highest good should be like a water. But what exactly that means? The Tao Te Ching also lists the 8 conditions. One condition is hard mind, is Xing. So Xing you want good, Xing Shan Yuan. So then question, what exactly means Xing Shan Yuan? You know the Xing on Shi, or all this kind of, the action, the timing, relationship, trusting, all fine. What is Xing Shan Yuan? Most translated Xing Shan Yuan is deep. Most of them just the deep or simply just the water. But how do we think about this water itself, this yuan? Why not say Xing San Shui? Shui is actually water, but here use a different term, yuan. Now, so yuan we can see, and the Zhuangzi also think about it, right? You are located, you're dueling in yuan. Interestingly, Liezhi has 9 different yuan. So your heart will be good at this 9 different conditions. Then it's a spiral, there is all water give you different forms. So So we can't go into that direction to interpreting what the yuan will be like, yes. But let's, after lift things, to think about what is the Dao mind is about. Clearly, this Dao mind is building on this structural relationship, right? And also it's see the dynamic tendency. Dynamic tendency here, I particularly think about the continuum, or you will see constancy, time, and the space. Okay, and then that is a contingency is the concept that you create this space between things, or you related with things in this spatial and temporal way. Okay, so now Xinyuan, how do we experience Xinyuan? So that is also lead us to think about the Dao mind or Rou mind consisted really its embodied mind, where we can know. So in the knowing process, we see three things, right? We see knower, which is agency. We see knowing, which is activity, and we see knowledge, right? So how these three things interconnected? The best way to think about, to illustrate this kind of Rou mind, one, fundamentally is uncertainty. Secondly, to experience that uncertainty is through the body, through human body, because the body is a hermeneutic vehicles. It's the way to know the world. It's combine this knower, knowing agent, knowing activity, and the knowledge itself. So this is what we can see the knower. So in here, I know because I really want lots of time to have a discussion. Particularly, I really appreciate Professor Gong Huanan is here. So lots of work, especially the understanding the Rou knowing and connect with his way to think about the particular thinking models. So in here, I give you some sort of textual evidence to thinking about how body help us to know the world. And one of the things I always fascinated about a Dao De Jing talk about. So I wanted to next quickly. It's about the knowing. It's how do you strong your muscles, right? And you soften your will, and you can see a desire. So clearly we can see Rou Zhi is in this situation. Rou knower, and you see the patterns, you see the rhythm, and also this Rou is always possibility, not certainty, right? Possibility. And then there's a possibility, an infinite possibility experience in time and the space. And then I kind of like particularly think about this, how do we really translate the words Jing Rou, and it's very hard, to think to use this word Jing Rou. And the Gu Ruo, you will see the flexibility is the bones, but the Jing Rou is very hard tendons and the soft. What is it? So I have done some textual analysis to think about, but I think this is an open question. Hope some audience here can help us to solve that. Of course, we know the Dao De Jing wanted to return to infinite stage, because infinite stage in the time is the most Rou stage. And there is a lot of question here. Now, one way to think about the Jing Rou, and then I think maybe we can consider it as a proprioception. So proprioception is because proprioception is talk about, this perception. That's the way knowing the world, besides the conceptual knowing, right? And this knowing, the proprioceptive receptors, this is in the skin, the joint, and the muscles. So it's perhaps the hidden senses. And this is, we can think about, could we make a epistemological argument for proprioceptive knowing, right? So a question is, for example, if everyone here is think about the use chopsticks, chopsticks is a good examples to demonstrate the proprioceptive ability. And then there's no right way to look at the how to use chopsticks, and there's no chopsticks can really not taught. You just have to experience it. Eventually, you know how to use it. Okay, so clearly we will see we are not balance these two things, the heart and the mind and the brain, right? So you see, this is coming from my students and the teaching. We're teaching with talking with a student. Student will say, she is a soccer game. She is a gatekeeper. She was thinking about, she most of the game time, she's like a mother looking at every players. When balls come, and she doesn't think her mind tell her body what to do, catching the ball, but her body just jump over to the ball, and it's become habitual activities. So for this is kind of evidence. Now we can come up to another conceptual understanding, since we see quite a better Rou intentionality. This intentionality follows, we have the shun that follow, flow, veracity, pull, and the yi, fulfillment. Of course, there is one very important thing is rang, it's yielding. That's also quite bad. I think that's Professor Hua, Gong, Huanan, and have done lots of work on the concept of this rang. Okay, so then I will turn out to another point is the Rou power. How do we think about this Rou power? So clearly, if reality understand in this Rou way, we see reality is in this kind of process. And then we also thinking about the knowing. Now I haven't seen the intellectual virtues, right? We have to do. Then how do we think about these forces? What's the source of forces? That's one thing. But also, is this a condition where we can consider there is a difference between power with and the power over? Okay. So in here, in the Rou power, we will see power is a capacity, is a potential, and its ability is a transformation. It's not about its competence, basically. You get the things done. It's not a domination of authority. And domination authority in the temporary, there is a certain kind of power in certain, just the moment, short term. But if we look at the holistically, that will fall. So, and then of course, in the workplace, we cultivate something called a soft power, soft skill. And this is, we see in a different, especially theory of management, leadership, they all talk about a soft skill, which is human communications and to how to detect the problems and solve the problems. Of course, in the geopolitical level, in the global level, we so much want to leaders to possess this, have this ability at least, right? So to establish this Rou power, of course, back to the text, Dao Zhi 76, very simple statement, and perhaps the strongest argument. Let's look at the human beings, trees, plants, right? And when they are alive, they are soft, supple, they are Rou compared when they are died. And so point one, right? When there is a life, there is softness. The second point is, if you think about if you're breaking the dead tree and the dead plants, it's much easier compared with a live tree. So the source of power is in the Rou, in the softness. So therefore, Dao De Jing, to conclude, made this claim, and the hardness and the rigid are companion of death, and the supple and the soft and delicate and the companion of life. Now, of course, this whole this idea, this position, that a statement has evolved later, especially in Huanan school, and this Huanan is, of course, then developed this kind of different mode, and the roaster mode, action rooster mode, and also hens mode. And rooster fight for nothing, and hens lay egg represent prosperity. And another thing is very important to also experience the Rou power is the body plasticity. That is Yu. That is Chinese horse riding, right? This horse riding is one of important, one of 6 liberal arts, 6 Yi, right? And one of them is riding horse. It's a bodily ability. It's habitually with a habitual action mode. So you're navigating the horse, because when you're here, Dao De Jing also think about I particularly like this concept of 持衡. You know, how do you 持衡天下之间? How do you conquer hardness through 持衡? But this 持衡 is horse riding. And then what is horse riding? Horse riding have different elements, right? You have a condition weather, you have terrain, right? And then you have a temperament of horse, you have riders' emotion state, and the riders' goal, how fast, how slow you want to finish this journey. So then you really integrate all these different elements into a coherent whole. So then you are come to successfully finish this successfully journey. And then lastly, I do like to think about this bring up the Chinese heroes. Okay. So Chinese heroes is very, if you think about it, think about the Greek, Greek heroes. That's most of them, of course, I know Dimitra can give you all the stories about that. It's very conquer the world. It's to overcome the things is through their strengths, right? Through their rationality, through their logos. But let's look at these 3 Chinese heroes. No, we have Yu, right? How he make the navigating the water, right? He learned from his father's mistakes. When floods coming, you're building dam, but actually you cannot conquer the water. So what did he do? So he just a flow with water and the building certain kind of dam, and then actually made it successful. And then we think about the Zhao Fu, and he ride horses, right? So he teach a king to ride horses. King get mad. You don't teach, because then they have a king always want to compete. Let's see who can win the competition. And the king always lose, and king is so mad, and thinking you didn't teach me all the trick. And then Zhao Fu say, no, I don't. I teach everything I already capable be taught to you, but I kept teaching you. But the problem is you have to learn through your own way. How you have to work with conditions, and then of course then you will think. Hou Ji is and what he and navigating the land, right, to ensure the harvest, and to have people has a good sustained life, flourish life. So this is, you can see what's the common trait or common patterns we see with these 3 heroes we're supposed to imitate. seems they working with conditions. They not, they are tentative to the world, to reality, and then their action is follow with it. They have wisdom, they have, we call it the rationality, probably called the relational rationality, and they also delivered the best result. It's a win-win situation. So this is give me the idea. So let's learn from them, right? But one of the things perhaps, so now here I wanted to just through the ideas, probably, I don't know whether this is just still in the thinking. So I like to share my idea with everyone and then we can have a discussion. Here's the thing, I think Hobbes' view or Darwin's view about human nature has a deficiency if it's not, we see somewhat problematic, or I don't really hesitate to use the words wrong statement, but I think there's problematic. So if we use Rou way to feel about the world, then we don't, of course, human beings has this wolf to wolf, the nasty tendency. We know the human beings has unlimited desire. That is the problem. So society should come to the social contract and to ensure everyone can pursue their own goals. That's important. But the bottom line is the idea of human beings, the problematic human natures, and this is competition, aggression, it's somewhat, actually aggression now there is work, aggression becomes seen as good things. And you think about the world, to be winning the world through fight, through the violence, through the war, okay? So that type things, I really highly question about this. So then I will think about the fundamental line, we think about the reality, the world, every human beings need clean air, right? Toxic-free water and the peaceful living condition. Now, how would that things come about? Is it through getting a balance, through aggression, or through a certain kind of cultivation, and through certain kind of tendency, right? Through, of course, we need a social political system, structure to support that. That's very important. But at the same time, each individual's attitude to deal with a condition, especially dealing with conflict and tension, frictions, opposition, how should we deal with it? All this is inevitable. But solutions should be multiple. Solutions should be thinking a different way, right? So one way to think about it, right now, I'm just using this concept of Rou to hopefully Rou can help us to see the reality, to knowing the world, and to go about it, and to directing our actions. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward for your questions. I know chat already have something, but I can't multitasking. So I'm stop sharing, and then I would like to see what's in chat. And then also the questions.
Thank you, Professor Wang.
Oh, you want? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Yes. I will first present our first commentator, Gong Laoshi, very shortly before he can share his comments with us. Gong Huanan Laoshi, Professor Gong is a professor at philosophy at East China Normal University and research fellow of the Institute of Modern Chinese Thought and Culture. Professor Gong's research focuses on Chinese and comparative philosophy, and more particularly on the notions of wei, taste, gan, sensation or emotion, xiang, image, as entry points towards understanding classical Chinese thought. Professor Gong has authored numerous articles in Chinese academic journals, as well as 2 books. 知识与存在 knowledge and existence and 味与味道 taste and the way of taste. So we welcome 龚老师，龚老师，我们好期待您的评论，欢迎，我们非常高兴。
好的，谢谢于东兰。这个听王老师的讲座，这个非常有意思。好像上一次世界哲学大会是不是王老师也讲了一次，是吧？这个也是这个柔知的问题，非常受启发。这个柔的问题，这个我之前呢也做过一些考察。从中国哲学来说，我觉得王老师，我揣测啊，王老师之前研究阴阳，这个从立天之道越阴越阳，现在转到立地之道，越柔越刚。这个王老师这个是从天道到地道，我觉得这个从你研究本身这是一贯的，这个非常有意思。当然这个回到这个系辞，我觉得可能更有意思，就是这个系辞一边在说形而上者谓之道，另外一方面也是在说阴一阳之谓道。实际上这涉及到一个中国先秦思想范式的转换的问题，就是按照我的说法，就是从这个视觉优先转向了这个听觉、这个触觉、味觉。那这个按照系辞的这个阴阳到刚柔，可能更接近的是这个触觉认知的问题。触觉认知的问题，在中国思想脉络中啊，可能这个更多的呈现为他自觉的对于视觉认知的克服，就是对于那种以形式为这个对象，追求客观性、确定性，形式性的这样一个目标的认知目标的一个克服。中国思想转向了阴阳刚柔。同时当然这个其他文本中啊更具体的转向了，比如说那个温凉寒热，温凉寒热这个和刚柔是一类的，这个中国所谓的四性和五味的问题，这个是非常有意思。就是如果我们把这样一个中国思想的脉络，这个放到我们当代的这样一个认识论的这个发展脉络中，我们也可以感觉非常有意思。我想王老师可能也有这样一个用心，就是西方这个视觉中心主义的这个他的认识论大体是一个视觉的认知，不管是经验论还是这个唯理论，以及康德的这个纯粹理性批判所体现的这认知路线，追求的仍然是这个视觉它的确定性，所谓的客观性啊，这个等等形式性这些特征。那王老师这个对柔知的这个揭示啊，当然非常全面。刚刚这个讲座呢，我就不再赘述。它的意义，我想在今天的语境下，它的意义可能就在于，用这个更为具身化的，或者说更为展示的与这种认知更接近的存在的维度、实践的维度，这个非常明显的这种触觉性的。这个认知啊，来补充或者说展示出认识论的更为丰富的，在世纪哲学思维下更为丰富的面向。我觉得王老师这个整个的气象，这个问题视域啊，本来就是世界哲学这个语境下，所以在这个意义上，我们来看王老师今天的柔知的这个报告，我觉得可能更有价值，更有意义吧。好，我就简短说到这里啊，谢谢于东兰。
谢谢龚老师，我来简单的翻译一下你的大概的意思。龚老师referenced understands this presentation, Wang Lao Shi's idea of Rou as an epistemological proposal. in the context of a difference, let's say, between the Western understanding, Western epistemology, which strives for objective knowledge, absolute knowledge, knowledge of an absolute character, and of course, knowledge which places sight at its center. So sight, vision, visuality. Of course, if we think about Plato, is at the center. And on the other hand, in the Chinese context, we have touch and taste having this a primary role in epistemologically related problems. And Gong Lao Shi remarked how Wang Lao Shi's discussion is actually very enriching when it comes to how we think about, again, epistemological issues. So now we will move to our second commentator, Dr. Li Manhua. And let me introduce her very briefly. Dr. Li Manhua is a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Research Fellow of the Royal Holloway College of the University of London. Dr. Li completed her postdoctoral studies at Fudan University in Shanghai after receiving her PhD in philosophy at École Normale Supérieure in Paris in 2019. Her PhD dissertation, Le Corps Ascétique, explores the ascetic body, explores the body as the milieu of ascetic practices in the Mengzi and the Zhuangzi, and in Nietzsche and Foucault. Dr. Li has written many articles and essays in French, English, and German. Welcome, Dr. Li. We're very happy to have you with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Professor Robin Wang, for your very interesting lecture. And I have learned a lot from it. And also thank you, Professor Gong's comment, which has also inspired me for some of the comments that I will give in the next couple of minutes. And first of all, I would like to express how much I felt awed by the interdisciplinary ambition of Professor Wang's work on the notion of role as presented in this quite short presentation, let's say. And when I say interdisciplinary, I mean that the methodology and the question and the idea of this question of how we can deal with violence with the knowledge of role is in itself a kind of intersection between social sciences, technology experiences, or experiments, as well as philosophical inquiry into metaphysics, epistemology, and generally speaking, this political connotation, socio-political connotation of role. And so I would say that from the very beginning of your presentation, I was already very impressed by this interdisciplinary nature and competence of your work. And secondly, I would like to point out the strong and important socio-political impact of Professor Wang's work, even though you have mentioned in the beginning that a lot of research has already discussed this aspect of role as a strategy, as a political way of thinking. But obviously, from your own research results, I can see that it's got a lot of potential into advising social groups and institutions in terms of how they're going to improve their way of managing social groups and enterprises and societies, the civil society or the state institutions in general. So from these two aspects, I would like to say that this is a very impressive study that you're presenting today. And so it comes to my own question and own interest about the topic that you are introducing today. For me, I'm really intrigued by the rich and profound resources of Taoism in terms of how it informs us of an alternative to look at the world, especially in a more bodily, engaging way that you have already explained in detail. And so my first question will be about the implementation of Rou as a bodily knowledge, as a soft skill in the current educational pedagogical training that we're having in perhaps higher education. I am personally very interested in the topic of self-cultivation. And so I perceive Chinese philosophy as possessing this rich resources of self-cultivation as part of education in our traditions. And you have mentioned the skill of yu, so horse riding in one of the six skills and arts in ancient Confucian teaching. And I'm just wondering how, in what precise ways could we put this into practice already in our daily life and also in our daily training as a student or as a person in society? And so my second question will be regarding more of the socio-political, even geopolitical implications or connotations of your work. And it's also about this relationship between individuals and even between states in the current global issues about ecology, for example. And as far as I'm concerned, the current ecological debates are mostly focused on this conflict or potential conflicts between economic growth, which represents a kind of hard, strong force that a nation would like to possess in comparison to other states in the international arena. But on the other hand, this consideration for preservation, protection, and nourishing this kind of skills that will help us to sustainably use environment to as a kind of environment, use nature as an environment to nourish our life. So do you see a possibility of putting into practice of the knowledge of Rou柔, or the soft skills that you refer to, into the current ecological inquiry, especially regarding this dichotomy between economic growth and environmental protection? So that's all for my comments and questions. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Li. Professor Wang, would you like to respond? I'm sorry, I didn't give you the chance to respond to Professor Gong Huanan earlier, so you can perhaps respond to both of the commentators now.
Okay, so it's quick. So I want to do very quick, and this is all good comments. And then I think, because I do like to pick up questions from audience, and so for Gong Lao Shi's comment, I think it's really interesting, and he pointed out a very interesting theoretical problems, so which I actually really agree. So how this visual ability in Greek it's very important. So we say 视觉 seeing. That's why Plato talk about the light. You know, you're going to from cave to the light. So yeah, 视觉. And then we also think about Gong Jiao also talk about from 视觉, then actually 听觉. We think about Heidegger. Heidegger talk about to evolve that human sensory to the 听觉, the atonement, right? That's the Heideggerian term, atonement, but it's focused on the 听觉. So now, and Gong Jiao actually work on something 触觉. 触觉 is touching. So we're really seeing quite a bit. So that is a progression. This is what we think Chinese philosophy, particularly Taoist philosophy, make contributions to a philosophical understanding the world. You have visual ability, you have audio ability. Now we have the touching ability. So the touching ability is really hard to in English translate. So I use the term proprioception. We will see whether proprioception will be a better way. Maybe there is open up to another things. The 触觉 idea is, first of all, 触觉 will focus on the body itself, right? So you feel how do you feel? How do you feel the wind blow today? How do you feel the sunshine? And then how do you gut feel the when you put somebody, you meet somebody, then you say bad vibes or good vibes, right? So this is our sense of there is a 触觉. So I think that is also, I was thinking we should discuss more, particularly presented in English world. You use it as express how that 触觉 works, particularly in understanding to constructing philosophical issues. So I really appreciate Professor Gong Jiao and bring up that. And then I actually used your work to thinking about this Rou issues, because the Rou issue really is you have centered, but yet you also feel about the world. So that's what, of course, and then I have question is, and Gong Jiao also talk about lots of the Zhang, this situation, the conceptual Zhang, yielding, you're yielding. So what's yielding and connect with a 触觉 to how that it's kind of how you feel. So this is come to this Dr. Lee's question about how to do it, how to change the world. I think I don't have a mandate of heaven, 我没有天命. So like this is so big issues, yeah. But I do think each of us can do something of a small things, right? So I don't want to be a 网红. I don't want to be a social, internet influencer. No way, I don't want to do. But I can do this in my classroom. I teach 18 years old honors, lawyers, scientists. I teach future politicians, and then I just do. One thing, of course, do what we can. That's the one thing. The second thing is, I was thinking about that's we need doing some kind of philosophical constructions. So in Chinese with the 话语权, if you want to gain the speaking, you gain a seat on the table, then you have to present something reasonable, and you have to present something making sense. And you can't just do, you 说你自己的话, there is no dialogue. So that is, I think, as the intellectual, the scholars, we should do so. But then I also think about the nature, ecological, the nature growth and protecting the environment. So I do think there is a paradigm shift to think about not the nature. Nature is not the resources. Nature, it's not something we're protecting. That what protecting the ultimate things is protecting, still serve humans' purpose. That's dangerous. So right. So we will think nature is our home. It's something we're doing in it, and then we want to. There is something we will work together. So this is what we actually want to thinking about this ecological wisdom. Now, Paul just wrote something about the Taoist. It's not ecological environmentalist. He can tell you more about this. But I also wanted to think about this Professor Lee talked about the soft skill and how do we do and what are you going to do? I think change the mindset and to do it's something about lifestyle. It is something cultivation. It's not something fancy. It's not something so distant. It's something very easy. Do you have enough sleep? That's the number one. You know, so it's all like, let's see the Taoist a practice, you know, do you eat well? And whatever, just a basic, very, very basic baseline. That's human existence baseline. So I think I should just stop here, and then I want to give more time to audience.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Before I ask our friends that are with us today to ask their questions, I would like to ask you quickly 2 questions. My first question is, if you understand Rou, I mean, taking into consideration the etymology, if you understand Rou as a kind of a thirdness, that is a kind of an optimal combination of the soft and the hard. That is, it is a third, let's say, moment that emerges. Especially, I mean, if we think about the example of the infant, right, in the Tao Te Ching, which is the softest on the one hand, but it has like the strongest grip. So Rou seems to be a kind of a, I don't know how to call it, a higher kind of state, which combines. And if it is like this, could we say that Rou, when tends to be normative, when we understand it as normative, does it have its own self-corrective mechanism? How does Rou protect itself, let's say, in the process of normativization, of becoming normative? How does it protect itself from a kind of ossification? And lastly, can science be Rou, since your perspective is interdisciplinary, as Dr. Lee already pointed out? How can we understand science as Rou? Perhaps quantum mechanics, I don't know. I'm recently thinking about this.
Yes. Okay, so great. This is a great question. You presented something kind of, there is a thirdness of Rou, then I immediately think about this. It's thinking about there's 2 poles. The pole is a very, very Rou. You become submission, you're losers, basic losers. So Rou, it's very become a loser because you just let it go. Okay, so whatever, right? So then there's a very, very Gong. You are just dominative, very dominant. And then proper Rou, maybe this Rou is said it's 2 things, integration. So it's we will think integration. So perhaps this is really inspired. So perhaps we have to have another kind of terms to thinking about the Rou, not just because Rou immediately, the suppleness it's loaded with the connotation, different connotation, soft, this it's scary, you know, if my students, I don't want to be in the Rou because I want to be on the top of the world. I don't want to be being seen loser, right? So being a Rou and then your beach bumps. Yeah. So this is maybe I would say super Rou. I don't know. This is good. We see the Rou has to, proper Rou has to be work, like you said, the normativity has to be work between Rou and the Gong, right? So it's more avoid two extremes and looking for correct way to go. So I think that it's very good. Of course, the science part, I love quantum mechanics, and I like this entanglement. I think entanglement is helped me to really understand Rou even better and give me more bullets to create this Rou idea, right? So quantum entanglement talk about the one things, right? And then there's photons, there is in the distance, they dissolve the space. And there is another photons, and it just opposite the spinning. And so clearly this is ask us to be tentative to things unseen, to think about every being's entity we confront, there is some kind of in this things itself entangled with another somewhere. You know, that's the sense of resonance and the sense of you know, connectivity in more detailed things. The difference is quantum mechanics, they need to use mathematical formulas to illustrate, to present, to convince people, and to test falsified. But the philosophical idea sometimes don't need falsified. We can just 异想天开, you know, just to think, to work. So.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Thank you. Any questions from our audience? Now is your chance to ask. Well, there are
Could I point people? Could
yes.
I pick up people? Yeah.
Yes, why
I can.
not?
I see Fabia here. Fabia, what do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'm sure Fabian.
Because Fabia is very much into Taoism and doing great works. What do you think of Fabia? Sorry to put you on the spot since this is a discussion.
This is not very Rou.
Right, opposite Rou. No, I integrated Rou.
It's super Rou, super.
It's a super Rou, right?
So I prefer to yield, to run. And yeah, give the opportunity to somebody else.
Okay, so.
Dimitra, there are a couple of questions in the chat.
In the chat? Oh.
Yeah. Wow.
Professor Wang, can you respond to these questions?
Which question?
There are in the chat.
Zoe and the. So, okay, so could I say something about this question? I appreciate this question. But I also feel like there's there is a difference. Could I see a methodology issues? Because there is a difference between philosophical constructions, and then also when we're doing philosophical issues, then we bring history and the literature together, right? So I was thinking that's really, first of all, it's going to be a long talk, right? So I was thinking about probably refer to three classical heroes we see. Maybe I just have to see, you know, Da Yu and this people. But of course, there is so much to like. There's a lot of people. Zhuge Liang, if we see popular person, we will see Fan Li. You know how endures the suffering and waiting for his own chance. You know, so I would want really. I think I would probably will going on this. And then there is a 四海为学 question. I think this question should direct to the Paul and the AK. You have this question. I think Paul should probably would, I don't know what one Paul you want to answer it, or if there's time, or I prefer if somebody audience can ask me a question, so I will take it. Well, because Paul can give you, Paul can give you lectures on this, because Paul have prepared this 四海为学 for a long time, so he know what this. But I do see one question. Okay, let me answer this AK's question. One question is 遇到最难解决的问题是什么? What is the most difficult question? What is for me is aggression and violence. That's for me. That's why I more talk about it. Oh, okay. I have 2 hands now.
Yes,
3.
okay.
All right.
Oh,
Cool. Okay.
So
Picked up.
follow the order. So first, Mr. Christos Sideras. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
I hope so. So thank you so much for a lovely talk and all these wonderful responses. There, 2 things came to my mind, and one of them was kind of potentiated by what you mentioned about violence, Robin. And you know, when you have the initial etymology, if you'd like, of the spear being both a soft spear and a hard point, or a hard spear and a soft spear, and the difference in how these sort of spears are used. If they're soft, you know, like that, they would make an arc, for example, and you know, the difference in use if it's soft and if it's hard. And just the if you'd like, and you know, just reading all these fantasy novels, Eastern and Western, there's this kind of idea that comes through that, you know, one has to be soft or yielding. And, you know, part of what we discussed in the Pankration, in the kind of gripping and sort of to be able to slide away or to be able to hold still and so on. This idea of the softness of the spear as a function of its assaultive power, if you'd like, or if its effectiveness in competition, right? So that there's this kind of thing that comes together, the soft and the hard, in a sense that, you know, one kind of, as you were talking about integration, and whether the opposite can also be true. Sometimes what can appear as jarring or aggressive or sharp or unyielding actually has a sort of softness or positive connotation to it. I thought to bring that out. I think I'm talking too much, so I'll leave my second point for another time. So
yeah. Should I?
Yes,
do?
yes,
Thanks,
yes,
thanks, Crystal. I think it's very interesting. Yeah, you point out another very important point. So let's think a spear, a pointing point. The head is hard. So yes, but the body part is a word, is soft. So any hardness has to be supported by softness. So that is one of the things we can see. Otherwise, the hardness will be break, and then will be maybe shines a short time, but will disappear through give a long time. And so hardness has to be supported by softness. I think it's the key part. Okay, so let's go next.
Next, Vitis.
Thank you, Robin, for interesting talk. As always, you put so much material in your talk that it's really head spinning. I'm completely sold to this idea of Zhou, and I especially like the idea of Zhou mind. And I basically, while I was listening to your presentation, I took it as like a marching orders, and I was thinking pretty much along the lines of what Dr. Manhua also was asking of how to implement that Zhou, especially as you mentioned in the beginning of your talk that you are thinking about this as a kind of a role of a philosopher of what we can do, right, as this particular type and set of people in this world. And this one, and I liked your answer also, how you answered about these little things. But this one comment that you told about your students of not wanting to be Zhou, not wanting to be losers, kind of put a doubt in my head if that ideal of Zhou is accessible and if it's achievable to the young, to the rich, to the happy. Maybe it's maybe it needs a fair amount of experiencing of failure and sickness and pain and struggle in order to be receptive to such quite a subtle ideal. What you would think about it?
Yeah, you're so right. First, thank you very much for your answer, because so philosopher, I'll give this talk. We're more interested to, it's like a musician, how my sounds like, right? So then you sound like, oh, you pick it up, like Dimitra picked up this integration issue, and then you pick up this role mind. Say, okay, that's reconfirm. I said, okay, that's important. So yes, I do think it's very difficult if you don't have a full life experience. And you could accept in Rou. Sometimes I feel guilty about teaching 18 years old, you got to be Rou, because I thought they should go there to get it. You should, be what you want to be, so give them all that kind of shot. Then Rou shots, it's a Rou shots. Oh no. So, but I think I have to make a justification for it, because I gave them a critical thinking. Sometimes the biggest issue you have to explain, like this semester, one honor student said, well, which food I should take in a cafeteria? I said, oh, look at the world fall apart, and then you just trying to think about what do you want to eat. But I think a way we can go about is to help them to see, how do you be successful? Which part you have to be successful? And then have you take a good care of your baseline? So how do you work with your social life, school life, your parental structure, your intimate relationship, only in that sense to experience Rou. Yes, I do appreciate that question. Okay, Bobby.
Bobby, yes.
Hi, Robin. Hi,
Hi.
Dimitra. That was such a fantastic talk, and all of my original thoughts kind of centered on the questions that Dimitra raised, and then Robin, your answer was phenomenal and very persuasive, and so it took me a little while to think of something else, but I think I've thought of something else that I find really interesting. It seems like an important clarification that you guys have made and really fleshed out or richly elaborated on, that maybe like Rou is really good when it's on top of the achievements of being Gong, right? So like maybe you have to work really hard. And I guess, so my thought originally was that it's great. So this idea of Rou being helpful to like stop violence in the future is premised on, I think if you're a world leader, you need to be very, very strong first in order to effectively or to stably or long-term like use Rou, right? So it would be great if you're already a major world leader, but if you're not already, like the threat of violence seems to be what allows you to be Rou, right? In some ways. So on the world stage, I wonder if you see it that way as well, where Rou is really only effective when you already have the properties of Gong. But then specifically in terms of violence itself and the fear of it, I'm wondering if Rou can be even worse, right? Sometimes I can think of if someone wants to harm me, Rou being very effective, maybe I would prefer them to just do violence to me sometimes than to take more sneaky measures that could do much more devastating harm to me, right? You chop off my leg, I can go on and live my life and get a prosthetic leg maybe. But if you know, I can think of ways if you bully someone or slander them or take them down or steal my identity or create a deep fake of me and I lose my job and I lose my career and I'm disgraced. You know, if you publish a really bad philosophy paper and put my name on it, I don't know. I can think of lots of ways that being Rou could really harm me. And I think bullying a lot of times is a Rou form of violence. And I might rather get into a fight in high school than be bullied in high school. So I wonder how you feel about that.
I don't want to fight with you, right? Because that
You might win,
there's
Robin.
no way. Okay, I actually had a discussion with it because as far as the strength goes, you definitely knock me off unless I learn Gong Fu and I know the trick. And then I know where to hit you. Okay, so that's I use my softness to overcome your hardness. So it's really interesting. I really appreciate your idea. Sometimes Rou could be problematic, right? So you rather take on. So give me the, you know, you direct telling me what's going on with me, and then that's it. Instead, like, so I have example, you're fighting with your parents or your intimate partners, right? What is the most what is the most effective way to make your lesson? If they hit you, yelling at you, I don't think you will be compared with the alternative is crying and don't ignore you. You know, if you ask girls, so how do you do when you're fighting with your parents and your, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend? Lots of girls found the way to do it is I just walk away and agitate my father so bad, you know, so maybe there is a gender issue. So men rather use violence and solve this conflict, and women more use the verb, more navigating and trying to find some way to show their strengths. So maybe Rou is, you know, femininity that demonstrated. However, I will see what your question basically is the attitude. I think how could we change attitude? Could we see Rou has a certain kind of merits? And then only way to justify that perhaps have to look at the bigger spectrum. You know, if we see you're bully, people bully you, okay, so then you lost, I don't know, you lost your leg. Are you happy? Or the verbal you, then you have depression, then you got to see psychiatrist. I don't know which one will be better. Your lifetime endangered, either physically form or the mentally, right? So that is something that's fun. I got to think about it. Okay, so there's lots of questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just clarify? I think I was talking too much and have too many ideas, but I want to just put a point on the question, which is I love the idea of Rou. So I really want to know if there are resources within this kind of philosophy of Rou or these philosophies, this tradition of prioritizing it, that helps ensure that it's kind of it's normatively used for good, right? I think I really wanted to point out, you could use Rou for bad and kind of do more harm because Rou allows you to be so effective. Is there anything in the tradition that kind of pushes it so that it won't do harm? So that instead of using Rou for bad, we would usually or always or only value Rou when it's used to positive ends. Okay,
so you want to locate the right, and then I think it's the body. The body gives you indication. Like if you're going to hiking, you so much want running down the hill because you're late for something. Your leg is filled on you, right? Your leg won't go with that faster. If you do, then you fall. When you're getting old, for older people, they say first thing they get up, they feel stiff, they feel horrible, they feel pain. So that kind maybe resources. So then you cultivate the body, make your legs strong, and you make your, the muscles strong and compete. Maybe that could be somewhat a way to think about it. But we can talk some more because I thought Chad asked a question and the heads on. Okay,
yes, first, yes, we have a question from Loyola Li.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. I was, okay, I want to start the video, but seemingly it failed. And I'm an undergraduate major in English, and I just find this topic very interesting. I click again and hear all your presentation and your discussion, very interesting. But somehow I'm a new hand in this philosophical arena, and the Taoism is really interesting. But when I turn the book, and I don't know where to start. So, Professor, would you please share with me how can we approach philosophy in this way? How can we start to learn about philosophy itself? Somehow we Chinese are not very familiar with our own philosophy, which I think is quite frustrating. Thank you.
Okay, that's really a big question. So how do I learning philosophy? Well, first of all, philosophy is about asking questions, right? It's about the why. So have you ever thought why? That idea of wonder. So wonder is the beginning of philosophy. So have you ever wondered why you only have 2 eyes in your front, you don't have 2 eyes in the back? Fish has 2 eyes in the back. Won't it be so nice you have an eye in the back and then you can see 4-dimensional? You know, that's the one things you do philosophy, you think about the bigger issues. Then you also grounded, so what we're doing is grounded in text. I prefer text reading. I think, how about read the Lao Tzu? How about go read the Zhuangzi, and then you figure that things out. I think that will be philosophy will help. And also, do you have current problems? Philosophy is not about getting a job. You know, it's about understanding the world and have a fun, especially joy. That's the very important thing. I trained in Hegelian philosophy, but then I turned to Tao because I think Tao is so much fun. It's enriched my life. So I'm happy with that. Okay, so it's a joy, journey of joy, intellectual joy.
One last question, because we have already run out of time, from Christos.
Hi, thank you so much. I'll just echo a little bit Bobby's comments and ask if you could tell us a little bit about the more psychic as opposed to the more psychophysical elements of suppleness, and how things like obsessions, which are very kind of fixed, and the fixity, the psychic fixities, can actually be quite harmful at times, and how this kind of suppleness or psychic kind of softness might be something that could be a very good quality to have.
Okay, thank you. I think the psychic concept, of course, but then I don't want that will, if mainstream philosophers tell a psyche, they immediately think I'm new aging thing, right? So that's the good, but I think your point, interesting problems we have. So I will explain that or present that as a nut, it's a blockage. So for those ideas, so your mind, your emotion, your body, everywhere you have blockage. So then you need to untie this blockage. That's a tone, you know. So to get in that tone, and then you need this Rou help you. Rou will give you, because what ultimately Rou is about, it's a create a space between you and the world, for yourself, your emotion, your action. That also, by the way, I wanted to think about it. I also work on this. I think Rou provide foundation for Wu Wei. I'm so tired of people misinterpreting a Dao De Jing like a Wu Wei, 自然, whatever, the ones in English world. So it's time to change that. It's time to give Wu Wei more better understanding, more the sophistication to it. So that is, I think, the way we can think about it. So there's 3 questions on the chat, Dimitra. Should I answer it? Thanks, Krista.
Yes, Professor Wang, if you want to. I mean, we don't have to finish. We have already reached the time that we're supposed to finish, but it's okay if you want to continue. Yes.
Yeah, I really like this question. If Rou become the mainstream, and then actually will become Gong. So this is a very interesting question. First of all, I don't think Rou can become mainstream in many ways in the cultural context, because in Chinese, I found out this Rou idea really resonant with Chinese mindset. Chinese just, oh, that's us. They can identify very quickly. But for the English speaking different cultural context, it's hard. So I think Rou might be or on the Christian contact, because they think that you have a humility to God, you have something over you. So then you have this sense of suppleness. It's much easier. So, but if we imagine the world and then they could lose its potency, and then so I feel that there is a tension. Laozi it's a see the attention, because human desire is unlimited and unstoppable, and they're always like that way. It would not. It's hard to to stop it. But you can wish for stop, but then you wouldn't not. You cannot be. So it's constant struggle. So, but it does. I will think this kind of interesting. And then what's originated from Laozi? No, I mean that's a Shi Jing. It's I think that this concept already exists before. Well, I don't want to see the timing, but it exists in, if not before the same time in Chinese culture. But the difference that we see the shift. And then before, like Shi Jing, they talk about Rou is a king, should be kindness. So Rou is to have a specific connotation, which is kindness, care, and it's a moral. But in Laozi, Rou become a reality in how this become Tao. That's what the Tao is about. Tao is the best, is to be in Rou. That's really amazing. So Rou and Gong can circulate. Yeah, in the finishing stage. That's for Gong. I look at Lisa's question. Yes, definitely Rou Gong is alternates, just like yin yang. But we tended to be more celebrate and promote Gong and forgot the Rou. I guess right now we just need to bring Rou, also see any Gong need supported by Rou, and Rou can become Gong, can transform Gong, right? Just as Fabia said, I become very Gong because I point to him, right? So that is some sort of Gong Rou in the interplay. Yes, that's just like yin yang. You cannot fix it. This is not fixable.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Wang. Thanks everybody for your questions. This was, yes, a very interesting talk. It has given us a lot to think about. And thanks very much to Gong Lao Shi, 非常感谢. And Dr. Li, thank you very much for your comments and your questions. And what else can I say? I hope we can see Professor Wang very soon again.
Where?
Well, even like this, some other such 活动. Yes.
Wait, actually, yeah, Paul, maybe you have time to talk about the 四海为学, this things. Oh, Dan, Seraphinas, you appeared.
Yeah, no, I think we're interested in specific questions. We're interested in broad questions. We're interested in more theoretical questions, more concrete ones. It's really just the content is not the most important thing in 四海为学. The most important thing is to get people together and have them communicate in productive ways. So we're not super concerned about exactly what type of issues we discuss. The idea is that we think if people are talking and they're talking in maybe very Rou ways, right? That of course, Bobby, we can't guarantee that these won't be manipulative or not so nice in some ways, but we did decide with Robin thinking that hopefully they won't be, right? So, and the idea is really, you know, especially it's great when we have Chinese graduate students and professors and graduate students and professors or undergraduate students and professors in the West just talking to one another, right? The idea is if they talk to one another,
you know, why don't you just call it intellectual gym? You know, let's get a workout.
Yeah.
No workout, you have all kind of machines. So let's building up intellectual muscles. That's it. Having fun. Don't so serious. That question itself is so serious. Do you get a degree? You know, how much are you going to make that? You know, that's not what this is about, right?
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
You got. So let's having someone, yeah, it's great, the platform, but then you want all kind of course, somebody can do serious the scholarship. Oh, there's too many of them already. We need this intellectual gym.
Yeah. The other thing is, right, we can't, I agree with you, intellectual jam or whatever. Yeah, but you know, we're going to have to go on, like we're going to have to some extent, work with what people are familiar with, right? We can try to sort of move away slowly, but we can't just say, you know, we have something brand new and we do something that no one else does, right? So the biggest thing is the attitude, right? Also, like you're saying, Robin, the Rou attitude. And so we invite people like Gong Huanan, like yourself, like Professor Lee. We invite these people who we think have a good attitude and have, you know, really care about having productive conversations, and we hope to, like you were saying, with examples, right? We hope to sort of have an example of how you can do intellectual discussions that maybe has some influence, or if not, it doesn't matter, we just jam together.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. And amazing that, you know, meeting the Dr. Li Manhua. I mean, she's working 3 languages. That's amazing. French, you know, I saw the one you said, and then because I don't know, you know, Dimitra said, oh, you got a PhD in French. I said, oh, I only have 1 slide, I have French in there, you know, so it's really amazing. So they bring everyone together. That's wonderful. And I got a chance to see my friend here. Matisse.
Right, thank you for including me in this amazing discussion. And yes, it's my pleasure to bring some of my insights into the day's lecture. And I would like to participate even more in the future.
Yeah, certainly. We definitely love to have you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Dr. Lee.
But
Thank
Paul,
you.
are you going to have a discussion group? Do you want to make an announcement about this following up? I don't know. You said something. I don't know when.
So next week at the same time, I don't think it's the same link, but it's on the page with Robin's talk. If you just scroll to the bottom, there's a discussion session. It will happen at the same time. I think, Dan, you're going to lead the discussion session. Robin can't be there. You said, Robin, or you probably won't be able to be there, but everyone's welcome to come and just discuss, you know, basically continue the discussion as we had it today.
Yeah, I wish I can, but are you going to record it?
Yeah, we'll record it.
Okay, so then I will do, because it's my daughter's wedding. Come on, that's a big thing. We gotta take care of life.
Yeah.
Oh, they asking 哪里可以看到公告?
Okay, I will write the